Well, hello guys. Welcome back to the Nexus of Geek channel. This is Noob DM Ariel, and it's a new year. Um, I did record some videos for the new year in January, but then I got kind of busy and I didn't really edit them, so that's my bad. But maybe I'll upload some of those in the near future. But for now, I'm back with some Dungeons and Dragons discussions and content. And it's I like to make fun, uh, informative, entertaining, short little snippets of videos. And today is no different. And I wanted to talk about Google. Before I say anything else, Google was being kind of a pain. The internet is not always great. I have to kind of upgrade it here where we're at in NorCal. And so I apologize. I couldn't really get Google to cooperate that much. So I wanted to talk about this though. My book, Out of the Abyss. You can see the cover there. Back in 2020, 2021, when we were going through the pandemic, every week when I got my paycheck, I would buy a 5 ebook, and I was trying to round out my collection. Mostly I focused on core books, but then I started getting some of the Forgotten Realms books, because the campaign that I was running on Saturdays was set in the campaign in the Forgotten Realms campaign. And if you play fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons, you probably already know that that's the default setting. And I had a homebrew too where I sort of tweaked. Got elements from the adventure books, got elements from modules wherever I could find inspiration, and like most DMs do, and work it into the campaign. Now, this book, the Out of the Abyss book, I have to be honest, it's a confusing book. This is not really a review of that of this material, because this book's been out for a while, But what I found really right off the bat really interesting was that um, the first chapter or so gives you a number of NPCs that you're supposed to play. The premise is that when you start out, the party members are captured in the Underdark, and they have to make their way out. Like classic fantasy trope. They got captured and then they have to escape. So it has a good premise, a good beginning, a good hook, I would say. But it's kind of convoluted because it's very again, it's kind of one of those 5e adventures that tend to be linear, and so you go milestone advancing as opposed to XP, and you go chapter for chapter. And some of them get really weird. The Underdark is supposed to be a weird location anyway, and you are escaping the Drow. But it's kind of hard to set up the encounters, in my opinion. Um, but that's neither here nor there, because there are some good elements that I got from this book, and I wanted to share. One of them being the NPCs. I know I read and heard critiques out of this adventure where people are saying that it's really hard for a new DM or a noob DM to run it, because there's a lot of NPCs. You're introduced to a lot of NPCs in the beginning, where basically the characters are prisoners of the Drow, and they're trying to make their way back to the out of the Underdark, and they meet like a dozen. I forget what the total number. I think it's like 10 or 12 NPCs right off the bat, and they happen to be like prisoners, and they're trying to escape along with the characters as well. And some of them may or may not survive. I really thought they were really well created though, and they were entertaining, and with really good backgrounds. And what the book suggests, or the developers, adventure makers, suggest to do with the NPCs is, in order to lighten the load, so that the DM already has enough moving parts, and in order to lighten the load, and so it doesn't become like a real chore to keep track of like over a dozen NPCs, that they suggest just go ahead and assign uh, an NPC for the one of the player character, for each player characters, assign one of them, each NPC, and then have them role play it, and that way, and if they're not really doing what they're supposed to be doing, or if they're not following the narrative, I guess, that you want to put out in the encounters and stuff, as a DM, you always have the option to overrule them. But anyway, these NPCs are really, to me, were really, again, really well thought out and interesting. Probably one of the most interesting parts of the early chapters of the adventure book, to be honest. And it has right here. I found, I think it was on a Reddit post that I found somebody. Gamers have all kinds of times. They're so creative. I would never really thought about this, but some of the better 5e books, adventure books, or modules have NPC cards that you can print out, and it has the NPC stats, and you could just hand it out to your players. Again, what they encourage the role playing, and they encourage the fact that there are quests that you can do on your own, but you can kind of have a sidekick NPC, and so it's kind of the same idea. So this one person on Reddit created this cards that you can print out, and this is only like a handful of the NPCs in the adventure. So you have the orc character, and you have a couple of drow. I think there's like a Darrow and a dwarven female fighter, yeah, she's a dwarven female fighter. I think she's a fighter. I forget. But anyway, they're all there, and you have the stats. You can't really read the stats. I have them here on the screen because they're supposed to fold out. So you're seeing the kind of like what it looks like on the sheet, and then you fold them out, and then you hand them to the player, and then they have the stats on one side, and then the character pictures on the other side. And I think it's a great way to do that, to encourage the role playing, and to incorporate. So what I did is I introduced these NPCs into my current campaign, which is not taking place in the Underdark, but I use the NPCs anyway. Some of them, not all of them, and some of the more ones that I thought were more interesting. And then just had them follow the party, and some of them became sidekicks, and some of them are going to play a major role. And so for this book, it has good encounters out of the Abyss. It's kind of weird too, because it's like you start off in the Underdark, and then you're supposed to escape. And when you but there's always the looming threat. I think later on in the adventure, where the demon lords are somehow being summoned, or the demon lords are going to make their appearance. So that's why you see like the cover of the book that has a Demogorgon. Demogorgon is on the cover. But there are some other like lulls and some demon lords that make a significant appearance. I forget. There's a few demon lords at the end, and you can avoid fighting them, or you can avoid bringing them into the realms. But it's kind of weird, because it's sort of like the Underdark, but then there's an element of the Abyss. So that's why the monsters and the demon lords. But there are no devils, so it's like it doesn't really. The Blood Wars really doesn't play a part in this adventure. It's mostly you are in the parties in the Underdark. They escape, and then afterwards they get recruited by a bunch of factions, including the Dwarven King, whose name I forget at the moment. But he Bruenor, I think it's Bruenor, and he recruits them to go back into the Underdark, so that they can help to counter the demon lord invasion. And so it's kind of twisty. There's like a wedding scene in there too, with some fungal creatures, or some native creatures native to the Underdark, that end up in a wedding ceremony, and it's really kind of wonky. But there are bits and pieces that you can incorporate or use in your own games, and that's what I do. So like I said, these NPCs, I found them so interesting that I've used them a couple of times in different games, or different game sessions that I've run, and I encourage all you guys to do the same. Why not? They're readily available, and they're interesting, and you can just plop them into your game session and your game world and have them run amok.